15 million years ago, deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, volcanic fire pushed a handful of islands up from the seafloor. For millions of years, they sat there, empty. No people, no civilization, just wind, ash, and salt water, 400 kilometers off the coast of West Africa. For most of human history, nobody even knew they existed. Sailors believed that anything south of the Canary Islands was cursed. Ships that ventured too far simply never came back. It wasn't a curse. It was the wind and the current, pulling vessels in directions they couldn't fight. It took centuries before anyone figured out how to sail home again. Then in 1456, that changed. A Venetian explorer sailing under Portuguese orders spotted the islands for the first time. A few years later, Portuguese and Italian sailors returned and began mapping the archipelago piece by piece, naming each island after the saint's day on which it was found. In 1462, Portugal did something no European power had ever done before. They built a permanent settlement here, on the island of Santiago, the very first European colony in sub-Saharan Africa. The town they founded, Ribeira Grande, would soon become one of the most important and most tragic ports on Earth. Because these uninhabited volcanic islands, sitting perfectly between Europe, Africa, and the Americas, became the perfect midpoint for a devastating trade. Enslaved men, women, and children were brought from the West African coast, held on these islands, and shipped onward across the Atlantic. For over a century, Cape Verde sat at the center of one of history's darkest chapters, a waypoint between freedom and forced servitude for hundreds of thousands of people. But something unexpected happened here that didn't happen everywhere else. Over generations, enslaved Africans and Portuguese settlers intermarried. A new people emerged, neither fully European nor fully African, but something entirely their own. A new language formed too, Creole, blending Portuguese words with African rhythm and structure. It became the true voice of the islands, spoken by nearly everyone, even as Portuguese remained the language of government and school. Life on Cape Verde was never easy. The islands are dry, volcanic, and unpredictable. Droughts arrived again and again, some lasting years, some claiming tens of thousands of lives through famine. While the rest of the world moved through centuries of change, Cape Verde often sat forgotten by the empire that claimed it, remembered mostly when its ships needed resupplying on the long journey to Brazil or the East Indies. By the 20th century, frustration had built for generations. In 1956, a young intellectual named Amilcar Cabral co-founded a movement calling for independence, not just for Cape Verde, but for Guinea-Bissau too, another Portuguese colony bound to the islands by shared history and language. Cabral became one of Africa's most important revolutionary thinkers. He never lived to see independence. He was assassinated in 1973, just months before Portugal's own government collapsed in a revolution back home. That collapse changed everything. With Portugal's dictatorship gone, new leaders in Lisbon finally began negotiating with African independence movements. And on July 5, 1975, 499 years after those first ships arrived, Cape Verde became its own nation. Remarkably, it happened peacefully, one of the few Portuguese colonies in Africa to gain independence without an armed uprising fought on its own soil. Independence didn't erase the hardship. The new government inherited empty coffers, another crushing drought, and mass unemployment. But slowly, patiently, Cape Verde rebuilt. By the 1990s, it had transformed into a multi-party democracy, and today it stands as one of the most stable, peaceful nations in Africa. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about Cape Verde isn't what happened on the islands, it's what happened beyond them. Nearly twice as many Cape Verdeans live outside the country as inside it. Nearly 1 million people scattered from Boston to Lisbon, from Rotterdam to Dakar, carrying the island's culture, language, and music wherever they went. A nation smaller than most American cities, born from fire beneath the ocean, built by people who were never supposed to meet, and carried across the world by descendants who never forgot where they came from. That is the real story of Cape Verde, long before the World Cup ever heard its name.